Ever had that gnawing feeling that something's off? You know, the kind that just doesn't go away. The kind that whispers, it's time. Time to end something. To leave someone. Or something. To make a change you never saw coming. If so, listen to this story. My name is Natalia, and I want to share a story about the day I woke up. For 15 years, I was faithful. I was there every Sunday, dressed in my best, sitting in my usual seat, reciting the scriptures, lifting my hands at the right moments. I was a pillar in the congregation, a leader, and the wife of a deacon. For a long time, I believed this was where I belonged. But by year 12, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a dramatic moment, just a slow, growing hunger. A hunger for more understanding, more depth, more truth. I had questions that weren't being answered, thoughts that didn't seem to fit within the church's familiar rhythms. By year 14, going to church felt like dragging myself through wet cement. I told myself it was just a season, just a test of faith, that if I prayed hard enough, I'd find joy in it once again. But every Sunday, I left feeling heavier than when I arrived. It was as if the very place that once lifted me was now pressing me down. I never imagined not going. That wasn't even a possibility in my mind. Church was what we did. It was who I was. Then one day my husband said something that shocked me. Why don't you take a break? A break? From church? That very thought felt foreign, almost dangerous. But deep down, I knew he was right. So for the first time in 15 years, I gave myself permission to stay home. 1 week turned into 2. January passed, then February. No services. And guess what? No one even noticed. No one called. No one checked in. But then early March, the phone rang. It was the church secretary asking me to speak at the upcoming revival. I blinked because I waited for her to acknowledge my absence to ask how I'd been. She didn't. It was as if I had never left. But without really thinking much more, I said yes. The church was packed that night, the air thick with excitement and ritual. I stood off to the side, waiting for my name to be called. When the pastor's voice boomed across the room, "Let us rise and declare our victory." And as one, the congregation stood up and then began to recite the mantra, the same one they'd been saying for 7 months. I heard it a dozen times before, but always in a half-distracted way, letting the words kind of float past me. But this time it was different. I stood frozen, watching them. Their lips moved in perfect unison, their voices blending into one seamless chant. Their expressions were vacant, automatic, and subtly, it was as if I wasn't in my body anymore. I felt myself floating above them, looking down at the room from a distance. And what I saw gave me chills. It was like watching a machine running a script, a scene out of the Stepford Wives. No one was thinking. No one was questioning. No one even seemed aware of what they were saying. How had I not seen this before? Had I even been one of them? Had I been reciting, not realizing? And now that my eyes were open, what about theirs? A voice called my name, snapping me back into my body. My feet moved forward on autopilot as I walked down the aisle. I stood at the pulpit, staring out at familiar faces, people who I had known for years, people who had known me for years. And yet, I felt like a stranger. I did what I always did. I spoke with power, led the activity, guided the crowd with ease. They were engaged, responding, hanging onto my every word. And yet, as I stood there, I felt split in two. One version of me was present, polished, performing effortlessly. The other was horrified, standing beside me, whispering, "They don't see it. They don't see me. They don't see anything at all." And when I finished, I did something I had never done before. I didn't return to my seat. I didn't stay for the rest of the revival. Instead, I slipped into the foyer, my heart racing as I tried to collect myself. I sat in a small office, taking deep breaths, trying to process what had just happened. And then I heard voices, two women standing just outside the door whispering. They were gossiping about one of our lady leaders, a woman they claimed to honor, claimed to respect, a woman they knew that I was close to. And yet, here they were tearing her apart openly and unashamedly. And they knew I wasn't a gossiper. They knew I would keep things close to the vest. And they just didn't care. Because the hive mind didn't need integrity. Because this wasn't really about faith. It was about the system sustaining itself. And it was at that moment, something inside me snapped into place. I quickly grabbed my things and walked out the door, got in my car, and never went back. There's a truth that I just couldn't ignore. Because it was that day I saw the hive mind for what it was. The repeated mantras, the rehearsed rituals, the obligation without thought. It wasn't worship. It was programming. And the egregore, it was the invisible force feeding off of our energy, our belief, our blind participation. As long as we kept showing up, kept obeying, and reciting without question, it would thrive. But the moment I stopped feeding it, it had no power over me anymore. You see, there's like 5 universal laws that move me, that help me understand truly what was going on. The first one, law of mentalism. All is mine. The church wasn't just a place. It was a construct of belief. The moment my mind shifted, its power began to unravel. The law of vibration. My frequency had changed. I couldn't align with that energy anymore. It was stagnant. It no longer resonated. The third law of correspondence, as within, so without. As I woke up internally, I started to see the church for what it really was externally. The law of perpetual transmutation of energy. The more I grew spiritually, the more I realized this space no longer had the capacity to feed me. The law of cause and effect. The moment I stopped feeding the egregore, it stopped recognizing me because I was no longer part of its system. You see, there's a moment you see that you can never unsee. And this was my moment. You see, I didn't leave the church out of anger. I didn't leave because I wasn't committed. I left because I had outgrown an illusion. And when your eyes have been opened, oh my, you cannot force them shut again. You see, I seen the hive. I felt myself detached from the egregore. And I had no choice but to walk away forever. No longer bound to the belief that my spiritual growth, development, empowerment was confined to the 4 walls of a church building. Thank you.